Good morning, everyone. And I'm delighted to have this opportunity to have a conversation about newcomer empowerment. I've been working in this area ever since I started my position at University of Toronto, Faculty of Social Work. So I also have a feeling that many of you have sponsored refugees being in the network. So many of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is probably known to you, but it is just pulling it together so that we can be reminded of what is important. So let me start with an, excuse me, let me start with a introduction to empowerment, trying to define what is empowerment. It's a transformative tool to energize disenfranchised people about their strengths and the dynamics of power. Excuse me. Empowerment involves giving people the authority, the confidence, and the means to achieve their own potential, enabling newcomers to feel valued. The key aspects of empowerment is autonomy, self-confidence, and influence over one's environment. It looks like a tall order, but definitely many newcomers, particularly refugees and refugee families, actually recognize this, not necessarily in terms of the conceptual pieces, but they somehow, come to that understanding that they have to take ownership of their life in Canada, that nobody will be able to support them throughout their stay here. So I looked at the definition of empowerment, in a common context. The Oxford Dictionary defines it as the authority or power given to someone to do something. Now, that itself, and then the definition continues to say that the process of becoming stronger and more confident. Now, the first part of the definition is somewhat kind of routine. In usually the workplaces, we all have job assignments, our job descriptions are there. You are supposed to do all of this. So in some ways, it is kind of routine. But the second part of the definition is what actually is important for us to remember. The process of becoming stronger and more confident. That in itself, a lot of people kind of acquire it over time. But for us, in helping refugee families and refugees to settle in Canada, we may want to sort of speed up that process by helping them to kind of take control of their lives. And then, again, when you say take control of their lives, I'm very aware of the fact that, many things are outside our control, but we'll get there later. So the second part of this definition, which says the process of becoming stronger and more confident, gives us a hint regarding the importance of empowerment. As you all know, the people that we have sponsored, our expectation is not that they'll depend on us all the time. Definitely, they have to let go, and they also have to realize that now I have to take things on my own. Now, empowerment can be structural empowerment and psychological empowerment. Structural empowerment is kind of where the structures, social structures at work or anywhere else, allows individuals to achieve their work goals through access to opportunities, relevant information, support, and resources. So it is more of a structural thing. These things have to be there to begin with in order for the person to be empowered. The psychological part of empowerment is a state of increased task motivation. And there are 4 cognitive components there: a sense of meaning, competence, self-determination, and impact. Again, the psychological empowerment is extremely important. Structural empowerment by itself does not accomplish the task. The psychological empowerment is key to successful settlement in Canada. Now, that's where many of us will feel frustrated that or feel that, well, all the systems are here, and why are they not being empowered, or why are our the families are feeling that they are helpless. But both have to be there, and in order to for the empowerment to happen. And what happens is in countries like Canada, where we have lots of policies to support workers in the workplace, housing, health, all of that, the psychological empowerment part, the absence of the psychological empowerment part actually does not help us to kind of empower the families and the refugee that have come. Now, empowerment by itself has a very long history. It was, mainly about women in international development. That is where we talked about empowerment of rural women, empowerment of women to achieve their goals, empowerment in terms of upsetting the power hierarchies, the patriarchy, all of those kind of notions are there. And then international development actually promoted the term, I would say. Of course, the feminist scholars have a big role to play in that. And basically, it is all about two things. One, changing power relations. And then the other is control over resources and control over ideology. So these are things that needs to happen, according to the feminist empowerment literature, particularly in the context of international development. I was actually surprised when I did a literature review or kind of literature search at the library. The word empowerment is a common term used in management, in medicine, in tourism, and nutrition, etc. I was surprised to see even in medicine, it's a medical researcher writing about empowerment, saying that it's an important concept, it is an important part of what we should be doing, particularly when we are dealing with very vulnerable groups of people. To me, that was kind of news that they use the term, excuse me, in all of these contexts. Now, there are some important concepts that we also need to understand in the context of helping refugee families to settle in Canada. These are sociological concepts, but they have very practical implications. And many of you may be very familiar with these terms. One is acculturation. It's a way of learning, the new culture and how the culture, the culture in Canada, the culture of the host society, and the aspects of the culture, which may be very different from what the home country where they are coming from. And therefore, there are many theories about acculturation. I won't go into all of that. But the whole notion of acculturation is an important one to remember, to understand. The other term is adaptation. Adaptation is basically the newcomer. So I'm going to usually refer to our families as newcomers. So adaptation is where the newcomer gets used to the institutions in Canadian society. For example, the school, the healthcare system, the employment system, information system, community, all of that kind of stuff. So they get used to it. For example, every newcomer family or most of the newcomer families will have children going to school, and they have to know the details of how the school functions, which may be very different from the host countries they have come from. So adaptation means getting used to the institutions of the host country. Integration is a word that we have heard quite often. In purely definitional terms, even the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, which used to be called Citizenship and Immigration Canada, formally defines integration as a two-way process. In other words, that the newcomer learns and understands the context of the culture and context of the host country. And then, of course, the host country also understands the context of the newcomer. So it's kind of a mutual adaptation. But any of us who have worked in this area knows that most of the time, integration is seen as a one-way process where, the newcomer adjusts to the context of the host society, but then the host society may make some changes, but not necessarily always. That's where sometimes we meaning the host country, fails the newcomer, because the newcomer may still be expected to change their ways of doing things in order to get used to Canadian society. Now, integration is very different from what we have always heard as assimilation. In the context of the United States, they used to say assimilation. Long time ago, I was a graduate student in the US, and I was going through all of these concepts as part of our coursework. And then when I heard assimilation and US is assimilated society, the melting pot and all of that, I kind of looked around and said, I don't think so, because there were all these cultural groups, the ethnic groups, the country-specific groups doing their own things. I mean, I did not see a melting pot there. So of course, that notion is now kind of, I wouldn't say abandoned, but it is not necessarily so much in use. But integration is used where we give a little bit of power to the newcomer to understand how things are done, and hopefully initiate some changes in the system over time. Then, of course, we have what is called transnationalism. How did I do that? Okay, transnationalism. Just following up on the description I gave about integration and assimilation, transnationalism is a concept that has been in practice for quite some time, or has been relevant for quite some time, and it is always now, where the newcomer to any country keeps vibrant contacts with their families, their cultural groups, sometimes with their religious groups, so on and so forth, from the host country. So the implication for us is, when we see that newcomer families are very attached to their home countries, and somehow a level of frustration might come on to us, saying that, oh, look at that, they are not necessarily getting used to Canada. We need to admit that nobody can literally and totally sort of embrace the host culture. If definitely, of course, the distinctions in individual adjustments will happen, but translation has always been a part of immigrant and newcomer life. But it is, and so now it is being used very often, quite frequently, in the context of understanding newcomer adjustment. And the final concept, and these are really a few of them, is the collectivistic and individualistic cultures. I mean, a majority of the people who are coming to Canada now are from non-traditional source countries. In other words, very diverse populations coming from all parts of the world, except, I would say, of course, I can't say Europe now, because many Ukrainian people are coming in. So, but anyway, so the point is that the collectivistic orientation of the newcomer is very different from the individualistic cultures of Canada or some of the host countries. Now, I really don't want us to think that these are polar opposites. These are pure types, and they are not. Collectivistic cultures can have individualistic features, and especially as newcomers come and settle in Canada, especially as they bring up their children in Canada, we know that all that sort of strict discipline or whatever that part of our traditional home country cannot be implemented here, because the Canadian culture for sure sort of opens up opportunities for individuals to be themselves, and then promotes that to a very large extent, particularly in the school system. Now, I'm going back to integration because literature sometimes talks about integration as having 4 key areas: is employment, housing, education, health. But at the same time, we should recognize that information needs of people are extremely important, and then the need for social connections. We refer to it as sort of social capital. There is a huge amount of literature on social capital and how it is important for every newcomer to develop social capital if you don't have one, or have or use the social capital you already have. In many ways, we also say that employment to a large extent is actually promoted by, or even can be achieved using one's social capital. Now, right now, we are talking about integration into key 4 areas. I just have to tell you a little bit of history around these notions. In the early 90s, in the early part of 1994, 95 to 2000, very many newcomer groups were coming to Canada. The immigration department at that time sort of called for proposals to study every newcomer group, their needs, and so on. So there were the Afghan refugees, there were the Yugoslavian refugees, there were the people who came from mainland China, people from Africa, you name it. Tat was my co-investigator in many of those pieces, and of those research. We did quite a bit of that, and we found out that most of the newcomers need these same things. Even if you're coming from mainland China or Yugoslavia or Afghanistan, everybody needs employment, housing, education, health, and need to know information about all kinds of things, as well as need for social connections. So literally, we wrote a paper on that, saying that there is no need to actually go on because these needs are the same. So I just want to give a little bit of a quick thinking into diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are terms that you always hear. Now, every aspect of our life is kind of is to be defined, not necessarily defined, to be integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is now usually referred to as DEI. Diversity is a range of human differences, including but not limited to characteristics of individuals and groups that are related to race, ethnicity, gender, class, sexual orientation, etc. Equity refers to fair and just practices. And then inclusion is the involvement and empowerment. That's why I included this here, where the inherent worth and dignity of all are recognized. Now, yesterday I was actually participating in a Canada-wide sort of a review of research applications, and one of the criteria we had to look for was whether the investigators have thought through diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it has become literally an official policy in universities, in many other, in the health arena, and so on and so forth. So this is important for us to know. Now, what are some of the kind of key concepts in this? One is the social construction of diversity and difference. Now, which is saying that society has a role to play in terms of defining and seeing our diversity or not seeing our diversity, and the non-essentialism of diversity and difference. In other words, we all have the tendency actually to say, oh, they are from India, so they do all of these kinds of things. They are from Sri Lanka, so these are things they do. In other words, we essentialize individuals into certain characteristics. That's a no-no for a better understanding of diversity, as well as helping individuals. We have to give them the freedom to be what they are, not necessarily box them into our own predefined categories or understanding of who they are. The other one is, again, multiple identities. Everybody has multiple identities. So identity itself is dynamic and situational, and so on. So I may be a professor at TMU, but I'm something else outside. So everybody has got sort of intersecting identities, and that is exactly what is called intersectionality. And so the multiple characteristics that that are ours, whether in terms of our gender, race, ethnicity, employment, or sexual orientation, they are all intersectional and interlocking. So we cannot simply take one aspect and say, oh, that's a woman and she does all of these things. Or that's a man from such and such a place, so he won't be able to do this. So we need to understand that all of these things kind of work and intersect and interlock, and that's the essence of our this thing. And the essence of experience for everyone, we need to actually think that we need to value experience. We have a tendency, particularly when we work in the area of newcomer adaptation and integration, helping newcomers and so on. We absolutely have to give, what do I say? We have to privilege the experiences that they're coming with. And they are coming with multiple, again, interlocking oppressions, experiences they have had, and that is extremely important for us to recognize. I had a conference a couple of 2 years ago on refugee family reunification at, the conference happened at TMU. It was so, in other words, educating for us to understand that when we have a tendency to sort of again group people into different sort of boxes, these individuals presented a very complex and multi-dimensional reality of their own lives, and that was eye-opening to us, in spite of the fact that we have done work in this area for quite some time. Now, as I mentioned before, Dr. Sang and I worked together on a number of projects. And one of the things we did was we wanted to find out what is the best way to understand to do cross-cultural practice, cross-cultural work. So I'm summarizing it here. Usually, as I said before, we have a tendency to essentialize individuals where we say, these are the cultural traits of South Asians, these are the cultural traits of, Afghan people, and so on and so forth. So we kind of try to define or extract information from our clients or newcomer families as to what do you do here, what do you do that. You kept on asking literally questions around their culture. And so we try to make a judgment around what is possible. The opposite of it is the experimental or phenomenological model where you would assume total, I wouldn't say ignorance, but total openness around, okay, I don't know anything about you, you tell me. In some ways, then we are kind of, helping the individual, we are kind of making the individual feel tired. They say, oh, they don't even know that, so in other words, sort of opening it up in a way that is totally, what do I say, creating sort of a opportunity for this individual to feel frustrated is not necessarily a good model to help individuals. So we proposed what was called the integrated framework for cross-cultural practice. In other words, we have to bring in both. We need to have some understanding of what people are doing or what is their background and so on. And then we need to sort of open it up and say, well, I know the context in which you're coming, so you want to kind of share something with me. So we kind of integrate the two models. In fact, again, in the early latter part of 1990s, the Immigration Department, the Federal Department of Immigration actually funded a huge project for us to literally write down the basic notions that everybody should have while you're working with a different group. So we called it the Cultural Profiles Project. We created cultural profiles about 102 countries from which Canada's immigrants were coming. And again, we took great care to make sure that we are not essentializing these cultures or these individuals or these families, but we are giving them the basic information about the geography of the place, the general practices, all of those, but then left the other for individuals to practice. And we distributed those books all over Canada, which was like millions of books. So the models of cross-cultural practice, I'm going to skip this one because it's, it's self-explanatory as you read through this. Um, you know, part of what we need to sort of remember in this one is instead of culturally specific techniques, we need to remember that, our understanding and our work with newcomers, it should be process-oriented techniques. And that also demands critical self-examination on our part. So, sorry. Continuing on that one, I'd say that, this cross-cultural practices involves attitude, knowledge, skills, and research. Again, this was all part of our model that we kind of published. So we need to have the right attitude. We have to have a commitment to justice and equity. We have to value difference. And as I said, critical self-examination, openness, that's another one. Then we have to have some knowledge of the background of the newcomer. And so the systemic context of culture, as I said, acculturation and internalized culture, dynamics of cross-cultural communication. Then we need to have the skills and the research. I'm going to skip that one. So I'm going to get into what is called the pillars of newcomer empowerment. One, of course, is access to resources, community and settlement support services. We are all familiar with that. Language and local services, healthcare, banking, transportation. Identify the tools they need to pursue life they want. Now, not so, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I did a study of Syrian newcomers who, remember the 40,000 who were brought in when Trudeau came into power. So we did a study of Syrian newcomers in the GTA. Majority of the people who we talked about the fact that the access to resources were limited for them. Basically, one, sometimes settlement workers are not able to provide the kind of support they need. Then they don't know the language. Basic aspects like basic activities like approaching healthcare, banking, transportation, all of that, and then identify the tools they need to pursue the life they want. In fact, as part of that Syrian project, I had said we will compile, and it was becoming very clear when we interviewed sort of private sponsors that one of the things they said was that they themselves don't have appropriate, adequate, timely information to give the newcomers. So it is an extremely important part of what we have to do in terms of empowering newcomers. Then the other one that we need to talk about is opportunity to participate, but resuming activities as they practice in their home country. Participation in community and family activities, leading projects or initiatives leading to training programs. Now, it's extremely interesting to see that, when we talk about resuming activities they practice in their home country, I would say by far in our Syrian study, that was the biggest issue that the newcomers raised. They said, they were plumbers when they were in Syria. They were, they were architects, they were doctors, they were construction workers. but they did not have the opportunity to practice their trade in the host country. That was probably the biggest sort of problem that most people faced, and they were really frustrated because of that. So by far, the inability to practice their professions, and of course the inability to actually get a really good job, were major issues in in uh, in in the settlement of newcomers, as we in the Syrian newcomers that I've studied. And then the participation in community and family activities. It was important to see that they should be uh, allowed, not allowed, but they should be encouraged to go and participate in the wider community, which is a bigger issue because many a times newcomers kind of keep their own stick to their own groups and families and so on. So opening it up, or sort of participating in the even school days, parent-teacher meetings or other school functions, encourage people to go and get to know other people is again part of the empowerment process, or it's a pillar of empowerment. Then the other is the ability to make decisions. We all sometimes can become overprotective and over prescriptive. We absolutely have to make sure that we give flexibility for the individual to kind of make decisions of their own. We can provide advice, we can provide what do I say? We can say that, well, you decide, but if they come back to you to say that, well, no, you tell me, and it is an ongoing conversation around sort of, what is their role, as well as what is, as opposed to what is our role as people who support this empowerment and people who support the settlement. I hope by now everybody knows that settlement is sort of the immediate what do I say, getting used to stuff around us around in the host country in terms of employment, housing, all of the needs that I kind of talked about. But then integration is a longer process. So I just have a study right now looking at integration experiences of women, South Asian women in Canada. To many of them, they haven't even heard the word integration, but they can talk about what they feel. So that's what we are doing in that study. So we have to foster an environment where newcomer feels confident, creating a support group that enables better decision-making. These are really important pieces. It's again, what do I say? Newcomers appreciate that. At the same time, they are also scared to make decisions on their own so the over-dependence on the sponsor becomes a problem. At the same time, lack of interest on the part of the sponsor is equally a problem that we heard from the Syrian refugees or Syrian newcomers. Now, what are some of the empowerment strategies? Welcome orientation, mentorship programs, training and development, feedback inclusion. Well, I'm not going to go over that. I think my time is getting...
Yes, I was. Thank you, Dr. Yes, Dr.
You're going to stop me. Yeah, I'm almost there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is self-explanatory, so I don't have to go there. And okay, so then I just want to mention quickly the barriers that exist: sociocultural barriers, economic barriers, institutional barriers, and then yeah, you know what? The other things there are other things, tracking barriers. Again, this is not, these are all things you could follow. And one important point I want to make before I stop is the mental health of refugee populations. Since we are dealing mainly with refugee populations, their mental health, their issues around the past experiences, the trauma they experienced, all of those are very important considerations in empowering newcomers. If we kind of ignore that and put it under the carpet, saying that now you are in Canada, you can live on your own, this is a free country. No, those kinds of issues have to be addressed. in many ways. We don't have to be doctors for them. We don't have to be physicians for them. We don't have to be psychologists for them. But the point is that we need to slowly work with them to sort of give them the confidence and sort of, what do I say, the strength to kind of carry on. This is life, which is new. You have the good opportunity, and there we go.
What I would first say is that, like Usha has already mentioned this, like she and I have worked on so many projects together. So don't be surprised that you find me repeating some of the things she said. I hope I do not just repeat it, but like elaborate. Usha and I have worked on many things. On a more practical note, she and I co-developed a framework for cross-cultural practice. She and I also actually worked on a more technical project that would date us back like quarter of a century. Usha and I was actually on a cross-cultural clinical practice research project on cross-cultural psychotherapy and counseling. Speaking of refugees, I have to thank Usha actually for getting me involved in this line of work. Our earliest project together was actually working with people coming from the former Yugoslavia in the early 90s. Some of you may remember. And I think during that time, I was probably more learning alongside Usha, who is directing. She, she mentioned this big project, like the Cultural Profiles project, and as part of that, the two of us, actually, we have other colleagues at the University of Toronto as well, like including still a very close colleague, Esme Fuller Thompson, and we are all feeling very thankful and privileged to be involved in that Cultural Profiles project. That actually provided us an opportunity to learn about like cultures of newcomers to Canada from around the world. So I can go on and on, like the Syrian refugee project, Usha still remembers, like in the early days, like she and I were talking to the community together and building connections and relationship with them. So I'm now going to straight into my presentation, which I hope, right, will give you sort of like a more practical orientation. It is based on a system of intervention that I've developed. Usha mentioned earlier at the beginning of this meeting. I do owe her an apology here, like what must have like caused her a bit of anxiety for not like responding to the emails. So she has actually prepared by taking some of the content that she and I co-developed, which is like an intervention, a practice model for people coming to Canada as a practice manual for immigrants and refugees. I think I still have copies of that manual in my office. So if people are interested, I may arrange to send a few to Barbara and David and see if like they can also help distribute. We used to sell them, but I think I can give your organization a couple of complimentary copies. Okay, all right. So no, I'll get started now. Okay. So like following Usha's presentation, maybe it makes sense for me to do a little bit of conceptual work here. I'm trying to operationalize this concept so that like they do not become intimidating for people who are not from an academic context. So I just want to like give you like what I call like a an operationalized definition of power. So like we talk about power, and power is central, of course, to the concept of empowerment. So what do we mean by empowerment? We can say that, well, empowerment is making you more powerful. But what do we mean by power? So I just want to give you like a sort of a quick and dirty kind of definition, which will be more easily tied to what we do, what we actually execute in our everyday life. So I'm referring to power simply as the capacity to realize your objectives in life. And power, we have to understand, is not stable or fixed, but it's rather understood as contingent. Most people have like some exposure to social theory, already familiar with these ideas, but I just want to emphasize, like by saying that something is contingent, the key implication is that it can be changed. Meaning, if you're like if you feel that you're operating from the position of less power or no power, it means that it doesn't have to stay that way forever, right? There's something that you can do to change it if you understand the contingencies that shape the performance or realization of power. The other concept that I want to put here, which is important, actually came from Max Weber, is the concept of life chances. So as newcomers to Canada, this is actually very important. So what do we mean by life chances? Life chances is the opportunity for like accessing activities, essential resources and services. Like, so let me be more specific. So getting your children to go to school, receiving good health care, given the opportunity to participate in the labor market. These are all life chances. Having the chance to meet someone you like and to develop an intimate relationship is part of your life chances. We call that romantic or erotic life chances. We obviously can also be talking about political life chances, meaning the opportunity to participate politically and to access resources for doing so. So this is the concept of life chances, right? The third concept here is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy basically refers to your own belief in like your ability to control and the events in your environment and to function effectively. And as you will see, I will be further elaborating on this concept through the rest of my presentation. The fourth one is strategies and skills. Those I would refer to as behavior and action taken by you, including the way you think about things, the way you talk, what you talk about. Are you able, how you deal with your own emotions? So like Usha earlier referred to a major challenge experienced by newcomers. That is the mental health challenges. And as we know, especially for people that we work with who can be regarded as refugees, many of these individuals have also experienced trauma. So how you deal with your history, how you deal with your trauma, how you deal with your emotional responses are also included in my definition of strategies and skills. You have to know how to, right? So if I'm experiencing flashback, I feel immobilized, or like sometimes I got triggered into a panic phobic response. How should I respond? So those are specific strategies and skills that you would need to learn so that you can become effective in addressing your needs. All right, so now I'm like further operationalizing the concept of empowerment in the SSLD language. I just want people to know like SSLD is an intervention system that I have developed You can easily find tons of stuff on the SSLD model now online. And we have like developed a lot of applications. I have like online courses, social media, like YouTube videos, and for your information, SSLD is actually a declared invention with the University of Toronto, and it is also trademarked in the United States, Canada, China, and Hong Kong. I just wanted to add a footnote here. The reason I did that was I was actually advised by a intellectual property lawyer here in Toronto that trademarking it is probably the best way to protect my intellectual property, because in the social sciences and humanities, unlike in like engineering and medicine, some of the technicalities were very difficult to protect when you try to tell people, well, this is my work. But like if you're curious, like all you need to do is just like Google SSLD and you'll find a lot of information. The central idea here is like the idea of needs. Obviously, there is like a psychological set of theories regarding needs, a social set of theories, and then there are also political theories and economic theories about it. So I'm not going to give you a long lecture today on that, but would rather move right into like, why are we focusing on needs? Because my understanding of the immigration or migration process is that people were transitioning from a different context, and whatever you used to be able to do and function very effectively back in your home country suddenly are not equally effective in the new context. And that's why people feel disempowered, right? So some of the things that you carry with you, like your social capital, and some of your symbolic capital, like such as like your academic and professional credentials, are no longer valid here. And some of the well-established ways of doing things, you know, like getting things done, suddenly are not working out here. And for many of us, right, this empowerment can happen at a more fundamental level. That is like if you do not speak the language or one of the official languages in Canada, your capacity to do whatever is severely compromised. So it is like pretty straightforward, and most people are aware. The ability to use the English language effectively, I would consider an essential part of your repertoire of strategies and skills as you transition from another context to the Canadian context. So now, like I'm like rephrasing like the concept of empowerment. So what is empowerment? So empowerment is now understood as enhancing your ability to attain desired goals in order to address your needs in life. And I put this in bracket because like I'm making this operationalized definition with the assumption that many of the newcomers to Canada do not have their needs adequately met. And that is why they need to be empowered, right? So the solution or the answer to that from the SSLD perspective is like we need to master new strategies and skills to address those needs, and including the strategies towards what I call capacity building. So you're not only addressing the immediate needs, but you're also having a longer term strategy leading to an overall improvement of your capacity to cope. So when we look at like what are our needs, so these are our needs, right? That like some people who are new to Canada, they don't even have the basic needs met, right? Like say food or what we now call housing security. And then obviously like we have a wide range of psychological needs, right? Like need for security, identity, affiliation, achievement, and very often it is neglected, because like many newcomers to Canada, they're in what is sometimes called survival mode. They forget that like life is also about like deriving satisfaction, pleasure, and joy. So the social needs are usually like quite well recognized. Like people actually one of the things that like many settlement work colleagues would do is like they pay a lot of attention to social needs. I have always been advocating that like social needs are important, but like sometimes the psychological and emotional needs are equally important. So like this doesn't surprise you. You see what I have put here in nation building. I just want to refer to this, like David earlier at this meeting did the land acknowledgement. So one of the things that is like sort of my current revised agenda in immigration research is actually geared towards nation building. And this is actually based on a sequence of discussion with leaders in the indigenous community. We have found that in Canada, newcomers to the country can easily, be settled here and without actually interfacing or engaging with our indigenous realities, which if you compare ourselves to countries like New Zealand, right, it is close to impossible for you to be like settling and integrating to the New Zealand society without interfacing with the indigenous reality. So indigenous leaders that I've spoken to have this to say about our immigration policy. They said that, well, first of all, we're not included, we're not consulted, we had very little say in immigration policies, and we were not given a role. We were given lip service, like that we enjoy special status, but like we actually do not have anything, any specific role interfacing with immigrants. They're raising that, like what we want Canada to be as a country, right? In the nation building process, our indigenous peoples feel that they're neglected and not like given due regard. And they believe that the future of Canada should be shaped not only by the settlers who are already here for generations, but like our indigenous people as well as our newcomers, immigrants, should all be actively engaged in the process of nation building. So this is like something that I have like recently come to emphasize after around the consultation with the indigenous leaders on the subject of immigration. So this is what I want to emphasize regarding social needs, and then like Usha mentioned this, like in her presentation as well. Like there are also like spiritual needs, and sometimes I refer to this like transcendental and spiritual needs. Like you have already heard Usha talking about this importance of things like purpose and meaning in life. So I would not belabor those points. So basically, what I want to like quickly walk you through is like in the field of psychology, these are all concepts that people have used to refer to the idea of self-advocacy, how to bring yourself to a situation where you become more effective and competent in realizing goals in life and addressing all the needs that are currently unmet or inadequately met. So executive functioning is very important, as its ability to carry out like familiar tasks. But like what is interesting is that like some of the tasks that are very familiar to you in the home country will take on different meaning and challenges here in Canada. I'll give you an example, like that is like going to a party. So you know exactly what to do when you were like organizing or throwing a party back home. But now you're invited by someone from a different culture, from a different ethnic background, or from a different faith to go to, say, a house party. well, you'll be figuring, like, so what should I wear? Like, what should I bring? And like, when I'm there, like, who should I be talking to? Are there like protocols regarding how to greet the host? And to people who have been in Canada for a long time, right, that is a no-brainer. But like, if you're new to the country, even something like that can arouse a significant level of anxiety. So. And then, of course, like if you want to like execute some task in Canada, it is not necessarily easy. Like I just give you very simple examples for newcomers, so like getting your driver's license, for example, finding the right school for your children, accessing income protection plans, right? Those are easy enough tasks. Like for some people, like getting a mortgage from a bank, right? All these are specific tasks that can become challenging for newcomers because the rules are different, right? The assumptions are different, and then you have to actually go through a very different set of motions to get to where you want to be. So ego strength is like another psychological concept, which I will just like skip through here. And so I'm going more into like, what are the specific things that you can do to enhance your self-advocacy? So psychological research has shown that there are like 4 areas of action you can be taking. So the first one is like the mastery experience. Like, so one of the ways to develop a strong sense of self-advocacy is to give yourself more experience of like performing tasks successfully, because that will contribute to your sense of self-advocacy. So meaning that like while you have to take on challenges, it is always a good idea for you to be prepared to access adequate resources and to seek help, so that you do not find yourself in a cycle of like repeated failures. So the next one is social modeling, right? So basically, one of the things that would be effective for people to learn, and for newcomers, you can actually be learning from each other, is how you witness other people by observing how they successfully complete the task. So like, say, for example, you go to a party and you do not know how to behave yourself, then you watch out like who are the people in the party who are attracting positive attention, seem to be like having fun and enjoying themselves. Like, then you look at what they're doing and then you ask yourself, so can I be doing something similar in order to achieve the same results? And usually it is better for you to be learning this with people who have similar background, similar qualities as yourself. And then like you can also be learning by transferring what you learn in a particular situation to comparable activities. So that is what we call social modeling. The third set of strategies is what we call social persuasion. So that is basically like telling yourself, like giving yourself positive images, right? So when you get like people from around you to give you encouraging comments and feedback instead of like criticism and like blaming, it actually would help you overcome self-doubt. And what like the general principle taken from this line of research is that you always focus on making the best effort, right? And not be bogged down by negative comments and feedback. So the fourth. Yep.
Sorry, it's David here. I hope you're coming towards the end of your presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
You will soon be seeing the last slide. Thank you, David. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. So this is like the psychological responses, like as you can see, like in the PowerPoint, like it means like emotional regulation, and then like we also like be talking about like what we call like situation specific skills that you can learn, and these are more related by subjective appraisal. So this is my last slide, David. Okay, so basically my message is very simple. You like you can be like focusing on learning new skills to focus on unmet needs. What it entails is that you first should be able to identify what your unmet needs are, and then you find the relevant strategies, and then you learn and develop them.
I'm David Curtis. I am a member of the Private Refugee Sponsor Network, and I enjoy working on the Skills Development Committee, which designs and runs these workshops. I have the pleasure today of talking with Salah, who arrived in Canada from Saudi Arabia in May 2023 to begin his sponsorship. We are going to talk today about his experiences in arriving in Canada and his feelings around empowerment. Hello, Salah. We are
Hi,
delighted.
David.
Hi, we're
I'm delighted to meet you as well.
Thank you very much. We know that it has been almost a year since your arrival and that you are well on your way to settling in Canada with the help of your sponsor group. I would like to begin our discussion by asking you, what were your feelings and emotions on the day you arrived? Were you excited, scared, hopeful at starting a new life here in Toronto?
Yeah, thank you, David. Honestly, words cannot describe how I was feeling the day I arrived. You know, just being someone who hadn't moved outside of Saudi for over 17 years, I almost felt like I was stuck in there, like like I was just not ever gonna leave, really. And just the day I was welcomed at the airport, I just felt the most surreal feeling. Felt like almost like I made it. Like now I can be and do whatever I want, and it's just almost felt like a dream. And it's only until I saw the amazing committee group that's when I was okay. I was like, okay, I made it here. Now I'm here. So that's when I started to realize it and comprehend it. So yeah, just I felt like the biggest weight has been lifted off my shoulders, honestly.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And if we talk a little bit more about your sponsors and your first meeting with them, did you feel comfortable with them? Did they listen to your concerns and maybe try and address them? And maybe you could give us some examples of what you felt went well in terms of your first meeting with them. And I don't know, maybe there are some other examples about what could have been handled differently in the greeting.
Honestly, from the moment I met them, I just felt very comfortable towards them, almost like meeting old friends or family members. It's just, I never felt like a stranger. I felt cared for and understood, and I felt just like all my needs were met. I was provided with all the necessary tools for my settlement, from food to furniture to technology. And I even like, because I might be a bit of a more of a techie person, so I was even provided with really good computer that really helped me meet my needs, and that was just very, very awesome. And I just believe everything was handled really well, and I personally don't think something could have been handled any differently, really.
Oh, very good, very good. And it's been a year now since your arrival, or about a year since your arrival. And maybe you could talk about your relationship with the group now, as opposed to when you first met them. Do you have frequent interaction still? Do you contact them whenever you need to feel that you have to ask them for something or for some information?
Yeah, I definitely feel very close to the group. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. They almost feel like a second family to me. I just regularly chat with them and hang out with them every now and then. And I just, again, I never felt like a stranger to them. And they're always here to listen if I needed help with anything. And yeah, I feel really blessed to have been sponsored by such an amazing group, really.
Wonderful, wonderful. I understand that you have an interest in the arts and film, and I wondered if you could share with us a little bit about your artistic interests and maybe what decisions you have made here in Canada about following these interests.
Yeah, yeah, I have a lot of interests in art. It almost overwhelms me sometimes. I'm really into music, singing, acting, and almost really every aspect of filmmaking is just I have an interest in almost. So since my arrival, I took film and television at Humber, and that only lasted a month, and then I realized I'm not ready for it. It was just too early for me to start that commitment, and college is a lot more demanding than it is back home, and that's something I wasn't aware of. Um, but yeah, and I'll be starting acting school at Toronto's Academy of Acting. I've also joined the choir at Islington, which has been just amazing to engage with my love for music. And I'm also taking guitar lessons now, so pretty much doing all these things that I've always been deprived of and always wanted to do, which has been really amazing. And of course, I had consultation and assistance every step of the way, and was always encouraged to do my own research on some things. And yeah, it was definitely very helpful.
Excellent, excellent. That's very, very good to hear. Um, we're getting into this discussion around your sense or feeling of empowerment, and I guess just be interesting to know what was the first thing that you were able to do here in Canada that you felt that you did completely independently without needing or having anybody to help you do it.
Hmm. I would say probably registering for Humber. I mean, although I did get some consultation and assistance, but the registration process, the applying for OSAP and all that stuff was pretty much handled on my own. So I would say this would be probably the first time I felt that independence.
Excellent. Yes. Sort of an association with empowerment. I talk a little bit about networking, and network meaning that forming links with others in the community who can provide you with help, and it's a valuable skill to develop. Certainly developing a network of people who can help you with things like finding housing, learning where to go shopping, or locating employment opportunities, things like that. Do you feel that you have developed a network here? And maybe what are some of the examples of the network helping you? Do you have?
Yeah, I feel like I've developed a pretty strong network in the past 10 months. I've made lots of acquaintances that really helped me along the path. Most of them are people from Islington United Church, just really amazing people. And I've also made some acquaintances at Humber, and actually one of the friends I made there helped me with my first acting job because they were making their first short film for as a project, and I was chosen as the lead role. So that was an awesome experience.
Excellent. Very good. Do you know if there are other areas of networking that you would want to develop or could develop that you haven't done already?
I would say I still probably would want to develop more connections that are related to the arts, something close to the industry that I'm interested in. So maybe that, but I believe this will probably take some time to develop.
Sure, sure. I understand. Putting down roots in the community is important. It's important to feel that you belong. Do you feel that you've achieved that, and how important is it to you?
Yeah, soon after my arrival, yeah, I felt that I belonged really quickly. It's just society here is much more I feel more like-minded to the society in here, and that really helped me in achieving that feeling really quickly. While there might have been some low days, of course, I would say it's impossible for anyone who's moving into a new environment not to experience some form of culture shock or feel some sort of homesickness. So I have had my low days, but overall I felt belonging like almost instantly. So that was great for sure.
Excellent. Are you beginning to feel like you have choices in terms of shaping your future here in Canada? And do you feel you're engaged and fully and freely participating here in the community life?
Yeah, it has taken some time for me, for sure, to just understand how to move forward in shaping my future. I'm definitely starting to feel like I'm able to grasp that journey, especially since for me, I've never really had the freedom to tackle the path that I want or to engage in those things that I've always wanted to engage in. So it was quite tricky to understand how to move forward. But now I definitely feel like I have a much better understanding in how to do that. And yeah, I would say yes, I'm able to better understand how to shape my future now.
Excellent. You talked earlier in terms of your feeling of connectedness with your Islington United sponsor group. Do you feel that you're connected to people beyond the Islington United group now?
Um, for sure, I would say that. Yeah, I've had made some connections again from my experience with at a Humber. Um, I have also had some older friends that were here, um, and I've reconnected with them. So basically, they were here before I was here, so it was great connecting with them again and seeing them again. Um, and also outside of the sponsor group, people from Islington United, just so many amazing people that I've met. So yeah.
Excellent, excellent. I have sort of one last area that I wanted to talk with you about, and that is since we're talking with our groups of sponsors today, what advice would you have to offer those of us who are sponsoring newcomers to Canada, and particularly in terms of how we can help empower newcomers to be able to do things independently and confidently on their own?
Um, I would say, although this is something that I wasn't very affected by, but since my arrival here, I've, I was really not expecting how much communication can be lost in translation. Although people usually say I have good English, but I still fell for that. And there were many instances where I have miscommunicated something or misunderstood something just because of, that language barrier. There's always that filter in the brain where you have to translate in your mind, and the structures of sentences can really change the entire meaning. And so this little miscommunication can lead to misunderstandings. It can lead to perhaps maybe feeling weirded off or stuff like that. So it can be in the habits, it can be in the behaviors and the communication, of course. So my advice, I think this is just a generally not very talked about topic. So my advice would be just to make sure that whoever is sponsoring is at least making sure they really understood what the newcomer is trying to communicate. I would say probably that. Yeah.
I think that's very good advice. I think we have that often, even in just normal interactions, that we misunderstood what the other
Yeah,
partner said.
true.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not helpful
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I really do appreciate the time that you spent with us today, Salah, and I thank you for your great contribution to our workshop. And We, of course, wish you well in whatever life and wherever life takes you in the years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.